You wanted the best and you've got it. The hottest band in the world, KISS. That's right. Rex is back on the Heavy Metal Hangover to rank all of KISS's studio albums. Hey, it's Rex from the Heavy Metal Hangover, and I'm here to do another ranking video, and I'm here to actually talk about KISS's studio albums. I've decided to limit it to only studio albums because, let's face it, Alive and even Alive 2 are such cornerstone legendary albums, and they stand kind of on their own in KISS's catalog. Look, even if you're not a KISS fan, there's no denying the impact that albums like Alive had. Scott Ian himself says that he never would have picked up a guitar, he never would have been the guy he was without hearing Alive. And that story goes for countless musicians who, heard Ace Frehley play, saw KISS play, saw the band and decided to pick up an instrument. I know that KISS is kind of a polarizing band because they were more of a brand than a band at times, but there's still no denying the amount of people that they inspired to pick up instruments. And I guarantee, even if you're like in the most underground of grind, death, blah, 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 whatever, I guarantee you can trace your lineage in a lot of ways back to KISS. You could say the guy in the band who was influenced by a guy in another band was influenced by a guy in another band. In some way, shape, or form, you're going to find it going back to KISS. There's no denying their influence. I think probably Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles are probably a band that has had, as much or even more influence. They are definitely up there in one of the most influential bands of all time. So let's get this thing started. I want to start with KISS's first album, the self-titled KISS. Now, key point about this album is it was actually two versions of the album released. The first version was by itself. It just had the normal track listing and did not include the song Kiss in Time. Kiss in Time was a cover song that the label kind of forced the band to record and put on later pressing. So after the first pressing, the first 100,000 vinyl were pressed, they actually had to go in and record a cover song, and subsequent copies of that album included that song. So they were hoping that this song would end up being a hit for KISS, so they would actually chart. Because, believe it or not, the first three KISS albums didn't do that well. They really were having trouble selling albums, and it wasn't until Alive that they really took off and became the cornerstone band. People loved going to see them, but they just weren't selling albums because they put on a heck of a show. Their music was secondary, and in some ways it never stopped being that way, although later on they started really kind of crazy selling albums. That first album to me is actually an S-tier album. It's really a perfect album. It's great songs all the way through. Kiss in Time itself is not the greatest song in the world. It's definitely a fun, like, bubblegum song, and it has its, it's a chuckle song, but truthfully, if you're ever listening to the album, just skip Kiss in Time and you'll do yourself a favor. The next album is Hotter Than Hell, and I'm going to rank that at an A tier. I actually like Kiss's first couple of albums. Firehouse, I think Firehouse is on Hotter Than Hell. I'm having a brain hiccup. Is Firehouse on Hotter Than Hell? No, I'm thinking of the first album. Sorry, Parasite's the song I was thinking of. Parasite, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, Gotta Choose. Like, it's such an awesome album. I'm definitely direct that A tier. Firehouse is on their first album. I don't know why I thought it was on Hotter Than Hell. Next is Dress to Kill. Now, I got to admit, Dress to Kill, here's where a lot of people are going to think Dress to Kill, it's got Rock and Roll All Night on it, which arguably is the KISS anthem. I don't know if there's any KISS song that more people know than Rock and Roll All Night. However, the rest of the album for me is always, it's kind of forgettable, to be honest with you. Like, if you look at the track listing, She is okay, but it's really not one of those like, ooh, I'm going to see KISS and I really hope they play She. Yes, I know there's somebody out there whose favorite song is She and I just insulted them, but you know what? Let's be honest here. Either way, Dress to Kill, I'm going to rank that at a solid B. It's still worth listening to, and it's still a fun album, and of course it's got the anthem of Rock and Roll All Night. But when you compare it, with these rankings, you always have to bear in mind, if you rank something at a C or a D, that doesn't mean it's a bad album. It just means it's not as good as everything else in their catalog. So I know it sounds, when you rank something in D tier, it makes it sound like, oh, this is an awful album, you shouldn't listen to it. But in actuality, it could be a very good album. It's just that compared to the rest of the stuff in the catalog, it's not quite there. So next we're going to have Destroyer. Destroyer, in my opinion, is an S tier album. And truthfully, I think I think that a lot of albums coming up here are going to be S or A tier because they had a stretch of albums after Dress to Kill and, of course, after Alive when they really got to put money into their budget and got like people like Bob Ezrin to produce their albums. Detroit Rock City is an anthem. One of my all-time favorite songs, King of the Nighttime World. King of the Nighttime World might actually be in my top 3 favorite Kiss songs. You'll never find it on a greatest hits, but I love that song. Shout It Out Loud is another anthem that they do. God of Thunder, which is probably one of the heaviest songs Kiss wrote in this era. I just live. It's probably in my top 5 favorite Kiss songs. So there's Destroyer rank there. Next, we're going to do Rock and Roll All Over. I have to find it in here. Oh, here it is. Okay, it's over here. Rock and Roll All Over. I'm going to give that a solid A tier as well. I don't think it's quite as good as... It's got another one of my favorite songs, Callin' Dr. Love. Hard Luck Woman is definitely... it's more of a ballad, but I don't know. Callin' Dr. Love is really the winner on that album. But then you're going to go to Love Gun. Love Gun, for me, I Stole Your Love, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to start off an album. Christine 16, Shock Me, which was actually the first time Ace Frehley sang on an album. He actually had a lot of nerves. Was it Shock? No, Shock Me. And he actually, if I remember correctly... The song was written about him going to the stage, and he grabbed a railing, and somebody forgot to ground a wire correctly, and he actually got electrocuted and fell over and was like knocked unconscious. And he wrote the song kind of as a nod to that moment in his career. But when he recorded the album, he had such nerves, and he was so nervous about recording the song because he didn't like to do vocals. He actually laid on the floor of the studio, had all the lights turned off, and that's the only way he could record vocals because he had too much anxiety. I mean, it's funny, you think about a guy who's basically touring the world playing in arenas, and he's afraid to stand in front of a microphone and sing a song. Either way, Love Gun, of course, is on there. Plaster Caster, which is, let's just say it's about I believe that song is, if I remember correctly, that song's about a groupie that like to cast, like in plaster, certain parts of band members. Either way, I'm going to have that as an A tier. I really like this album. I Stole Your Love, Christine 16, Shock Me, Love Gun. I mean, it's got so many great songs. I'm going to have to say Peter Criss is a D. Look, Peter Criss I think was actually the best selling, if I remember correctly. But, I mean, the guy was a Rod Stewart guy. He was totally he likes singing like the ballads like this. Basically, he wanted to do a whole album of Beth, which was another huge song for them. Not really that into it. Gene Simmons, I'm also going to drop on D tier. And when I got Gene Simmons' solo album, I'll never forget. I bought it in high school. I open it up, and I'm thinking every song's going to sound like God of Thunder. And... it's going to be heavy because it's the demon, it's the demon. He's going to do all that kind of stuff. And it starts off with all these crazy like demonic sounds and like, chorus is like, oh, and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, this is what I was looking for. And all of a sudden it cuts into, she's radioactive. And then some song about him living in sin at the Holiday Inn. And look, I got to admit to you, like, Gene Simmons' solo album's a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me just because of how funny it is. I know he did When You Wish Upon a Star. He covered that. And I don't know. Gene Simmons' solo album, objectively, it's at the bottom tier. But, I mean, it's got its moments and it's still a fun listen. Paul Stanley's solo album, I'm going to give a C because, honestly, it's a Kiss album. I mean, it really is. It's a weak Kiss album. It's not bad. And if you like Kiss, you'll like Paul Stanley's solo album. But it's just kind of like one of those things where it's like Kiss when you're missing 3 of the parts, 3 of the writers or whatever. Ace's solo album, on the other hand, I'm giving a solid A tier. I have to admit, Ace's solo album was the best. He goes from having stage fright singing songs to writing the best solo album out of the bunch. I think a lot of those songs hold up. Snowblind, Rip It Out, of course, New York Groove, which I believe is a cover song. they're all, I mean, the whole album is just solid. And he, you know, when he went into Fraley's Comet, when he went off on his own, he repeated that. His first, like, solo album, like, solo album outside of Kiss, was incredible back to back. I listen to that thing all the time. All right, now we're going to go on to Dynasty. Dynasty, again, you know, it had their highest charting album. At the same time, I generally just, it's a, you know, I Was Made for Loving You's a disco song. It's catchy. I don't think any Kiss fan ever complains about it, but I'm honestly going to drop it on a C tier. You know, the rest of the album is just kind of like, it's all right, I guess. Unmasked, I'm going to drop. Unmasked, I'm kind of split on, because Unmasked has some fun songs on it, and it's not a terrible album. Shandy was a big song off of Unmasked, but I mean, really and truthfully, for my taste, I'm also going to drop that at a C tier. It's not an album I can't stand and don't like, but it certainly is an album that I don't really want to listen to. I don't seek out listening to it. So, Music from the Elder. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I know a lot of you are expecting me to drop that firmly on D tier. I've got to admit, Music from the Elder, I actually like a lot of songs off of it. Now, I do not have the original version of the album. I have a repress, and from what I understand, the album was meant to be a concept album because they wanted to release a movie that went along with the album. And that's why it's called Music from the Elder, because they wanted to write or they wanted to produce a movie called The Elder, which would go along with some of these songs. So the 1997 version, when they re-released it, actually put the songs in the correct order that they were supposed to be in, to kind of actually, like, so you can follow the story, or so that it made more sense, because the first version they made it like a normal album. Well, this song's, you know, strong lead and everything else. I actually I've listened to both versions, and I actually like the re-release. I think it's really good, and I think Escape from the Island, Mr. Blackwell's okay. I think there's good, like, is a catchy song. I Believe in Me. I love that song. So I'm actually going to drop that at a B tier. And I don't know, maybe you agree with me. Maybe you're telling me I'm nuts and have no taste or whatsoever. But what are you going to do about it? This is my list. Creatures of the Night is an awesome album. I love it loud. War Machine, which actually 6 Feet Under later covered. It's a really cool album. It's actually very heavy, and I'm talking heavy in like 19. You know, what year did this album come out? 82 heavy. You know, it's not Kiss at their heaviest. That would come later, in my opinion. But I'm gonna actually drop that at a solid B tier as well. Lick It Up. Now we're getting into the interesting part of Kiss's history, where they took the makeup off. They decided, look, we're being silly. We're getting older. We're going to take the makeup off, and we're going to do this whole glam metal thing, where Gene Simmons went from looking like a demon to an angry grandmother. Lick It Up is not a terrible album, but it really and truthfully, it's got a handful of songs on it. It's got the title track, and really that's about it. I think the only thing people remember off Lick It Up, and the only thing I really remember off Lick It Up, is the title track. So I'm going to drop it down here in C tier, because again, it's not terrible, but it certainly isn't, you know, like my go-to with Kiss. Animalize was a little bit more fun, I have to admit. Heaven's on Fire was the big song from that, and I really actually like this album a little bit more. At the same time, I don't know if it ranks up there. You know what? Actually, I am going to drop it on a B tier, because I think it's better than Lick It Up. I think it's better than Dynasty and Unmasked, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's okay. Asylum, these albums all blend together for me. It's kind of funny, because the glam era of Kiss, I really kind of feel like they got into the let's just manufacture albums. I really and truthfully I remember really liking Asylum, but I just don't remember it being that interesting. So I'm gonna definitely drop it on a C tier. Oh, that's Crazy Nights. I'm gonna drop it on a C tier, because again, it's just kind of forgettable. It's just manufactured music at that point. Next we have Crazy Nights. Now, Crazy Nights is a catchy song. Crazy, 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 crazy nights. I do like this song a little bit better. I do like this album a little bit more than Asylum. I think it's a little bit more fun. Again, you're not going to find it in anybody. I don't think really. It might be somebody's favorite glam Kiss album, but I'd be really surprised if any of the glam era Kiss albums are someone's favorite Kiss album. I could be wrong. I'm not here to tell you that they're terrible. I'm here to tell you that how I feel about these albums personally. Hot in the Shade was something that I had mixed feelings about for a long time. I remember it being, I remember it kind of being one of those albums where I avoided listening to it because everybody told me how bad it was. And then when I listened to it, I was like, it's not awful. It's not bad. It's not great. But so I'm definitely dropping it on a C tier. I have all these albums. I own all these albums. I listen to all these albums. But, at the same time, some of these were bought for collection. Like, I just want to have the whole Kiss, discography or whatever. So, Revenge. Now, Revenge, I have to admit, I love Revenge. This, in my opinion, is Kiss at its heaviest. It has Unholy, which is a heavy song. I mean, again, when I say heavy, I'm not saying that they're going to give Cannibal Corpse or Obituary a run for their money. I'm saying when you hear Kiss sing Unholy, it's incredible. It also has the epic God Gave Rock and Roll to You. You might recognize that from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, the song that they finish on, the song where they go back in time and they come back and after 18 months of intensive guitar training, that's the song they're playing, God Gave Rock and Roll to You. So if you're not a big Kiss fan, but you have seen Bill and Ted, that is a Kiss song. And that's, in my opinion, one of the most epic songs. I'm going to drop it. I don't quite think it's an A tier. I kind of do want to. I'm going to drop it on A tier. I'm going to go for broke and drop it on A tier. I think Revenge was one of the best things they put out at that time. Carnival of Souls. This is when they decided that they wanted to kind of be a grunge band. So, I'm going to drop. It's got to go on D tier. I remember listening to this album and just not enjoying myself at all. I can't think of a single thing that I can say about it other than that. Psycho Circus is a funny album. It came out in 1998, and the first time I ever got to see Kiss, and I'm going to reveal my age here, was in the 2000 reunion tour. I never saw them in the glam days. They never toured near me, and that's the other thing too. I grew up in a little town where there wasn't much going on, so they never really toured near me. But during the reunion tour, they came dead on through my hometown. And I remember Psycho Circus coming out at the time. I was a big Kiss fan. I was probably one of the only high school kids in the late '90s to go to me and Duff, who co-host this show, went as Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. We were probably two of the only kids to do that in the '90s. The two of the only teenagers to dress up like the Demon and the Star Child. But I remember Psycho Circus. I remember the title track, "You're in the Psycho Circus." But really and truthfully, I also remember it just kind of being forgettable. So I'm going to drop Psycho Circus on a C tier because I don't think it's a bad album. I think that they did better work. And, it's one of those things where I think at that point they finally crossed over into legacy band territory. And, it's not that it was a bad album. It's just that when you go see Kiss, I can't remember any time in my life saying, oh, geez, I really hope Kiss plays Psycho Circus tonight. And I got to say, the last two albums I'm going to drop right here on C tier as well. I'm going to drop Monster and Sonic Boom on C tier because, again, you have a fractured band. It's not the original lineup. It's not even the classic lineup. I mean, Eric Singer's a great drummer. I'm not taking anything away from Eric Singer. But at the same time, it's kind of like that's when I feel like Kiss crossed over from we're going to write music to we're going to produce a product. And again, Monster and Sonic Boom aren't as bad as like Gene Simmons' solo album and Peter Criss' solo album. And again, I shouldn't say bad. I dislike those albums more than I like their newer albums, Sonic Boom and Monster. But at the same time, it's like, it was manufactured music. So it was kind of like, actually, I almost want to drop those at D tier. I'm going to drop them at D tier because you know what? I got to be honest with you. I'm lying to myself, and I'm trying to be overly fair to those albums. They're just literally a band that's like, we need to put out an album to merchandise it, or we need to put out an album to have an excuse to go on the road and say we're touring, more than just being, oh, we're touring on our 30th greatest hits tour or whatever. So I don't know. I'm dropping those down there. So it's actually quite surprising because I'm looking at this list and I would have thought that a lot more albums would rank higher, but really and truthfully, in my opinion, now Alive and Alive 2 would probably be included on the S tier if I was to put live albums in here. Unplugged and Alive 3 would probably be A. But again, I didn't include live albums, but we got on the S tier, we got Kiss and Destroyer. On A tier, we got Hotter Than Hell. We got Rock and Roll All Over. We got Love Gun. We got Ace Frehley's solo album. We got Revenge. On B tier, we have Dressed to Kill, Music from the Elder, Creatures of the Night, Animalize, and Crazy Nights. We have down here on C tier, Paul Stanley solo album, Dynasty, Unmasked, Lick It Up, Asylum, Hot in the Shade, Psycho Circus. And down here on D tier, we have Peter Criss's solo album, Gene Simmons solo album, Carnival of Souls, Monster, and Sonic Boom. Again, I don't think that those D tier albums are terrible, and I know that Peter Criss's solo album, I believe, was one of the best selling. It was a pop album, effectively. It was a pop rock album, and he did great. It's not my thing. Gene Simmons solo album, again, when I listen to it, I almost have to listen to it with a smirk. Again, if it's your favorite of the solo albums, I'm not telling you that's not I'm not telling you that's bad. I'm just saying it's not my speed. Anyways, that's my Kiss ranking. Again, don't forget to listen to the podcast. We're on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts. We even have a lot of our episodes eventually make their way to YouTube with my co-host Duff. I'm starting a few new segments and coming up, and I hope to expand the YouTube presence a little bit. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.